Well, our journey into the paranormal is almost at an end. My personal journey ended some years ago when we finally completed our ghost experiment. So let's finish that up first, and then I've got a few thoughts. Before you begin any experiment, you must control as many variables as you can from the environment. Variables are things that other scientists look at, observe, to poke holes in your experimental design.
Here at Wilderhope Manor.
If you watch ghost hunting groups, this usually consists of someone walking around.
It is 3 floors, 16 bedrooms. There are staircases on either side. There is a basement. We are now locked down for the next 24 hours.
The day of, or maybe the night before, with an EMF meter going, yeah, there's some EMF. It's the modem, or it's the fridge, or maybe it's something we can't identify. This is often called the baseline.
We have also been taking baseline readings using the GQ EMF detector, which gives us a very, very accurate source for the levels of electromagnetic field within the location. Now, we're not getting any Wi-Fi. We are getting nearby sort of radio phone towers, which is quite normal for an area like this.
Unfortunately, with ghosts, it's kind of impossible to control all the variables when your subject can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants. This is one reason scientists don't spend a lot of time looking for ghosts. But in our control, we tried to eliminate as many possible natural causes that could affect the environment. We spent 3 months going to the location, twice a week, before the experiment was to run. This was to set up data loggers both upstairs and downstairs and outside the building. These recorded the temperature, humidity, and the atmospheric pressure. These were the same data loggers that would also run during the experiment, in exactly the same locations as we ran them for this control. There were also 2 motion-activated cameras, which we placed upstairs and downstairs. That gave us some control over any unexpected possible movement going on in the building when we weren't there. All this equipment covered not just the time period when we would be running the experiment, which was, only a couple of hours each night, but would also cover 48 hours either side of the experiment. Why? Well, things can happen before or after you leave that can alter what you're trying to capture. It's vital you eliminate any natural or man-made sources that you might interpret as anything paranormal before the investigation. What changes in temperature occurred due to some heat source or cooling kicking on the building? What electronic devices were running in the building? Were there people or animals coming into the location and contaminating the environment? All readings could and were checked against the bomb website for the days and nights, matching and confirming our measurements. The ghost hunter's way of checking a place out that you've never been to before, or very rarely, just before an investigation, is careless. It negates all your results. Simply saying afterwards, I know what I saw or heard, isn't going to carry much weight unless you've done the due diligence to eliminate possible variables. I compare it to a scientist being asked to investigate pollution in a waterway due to residents' complaints. You rock up to a car park on one day and take a water sample. Taking it back to the lab, finding acceptable levels of bacteria and chemicals, and then you saying to the clients, no, there's no problems here. You didn't sample anywhere else? Maybe downstream or in a catchment? You only went one day at one time? What about if you came back on the weekend? You might have caught the hordes of picnickers discarding their trash and dirty dishwater, or vans dumping their grey water into the river. Hell, you may have even found the breached sewer pipe just downstream of you. You get the point. Our control found nothing unusual or out of the ordinary that might affect the experiment to come. The readings were normal, the cameras did not trigger, except for one night when the caretaker came by accident.
Better.
I'm here with Professor Oldman's group.
Oh, I'm Hanson. I'm the caretaker.
Hi.
Hi.
It was actually reassuring to see that our setup worked. After 3 months of controlled readings, for the next 4 months, from May 2013 to August 2013, we ran a total of 27 sessions, with all of our equipment ending up logging 12 hours of recordings and data. There were no disturbances. Out of the ordinary. Yes, there were anomalies, as we'd found on our 2 previous investigations in 2011. Anomalies that we had answers for. The geophones were going off during storms. On one night as thunder shook the building, no light disturbances occurred, other than the investigators walking in front of the lux meter. And yes, we caught just as many EVPs as before, but these were not only occurring elsewhere in the building, their source was clear and evident because it was in other recorders further away. This was especially true for the outside recorder. With the outside recorder, we really hit the jackpot.
The winner takes it all.
That one small inclusion of an outside recorder debunked dozens of EVPs that, once filtered through the building, sounded like murmurs and scrapes or screams. Cats or animals are on the grounds. Traffic sounds. My favourite was the female scream, which the outside recorder clearly showed was air brakes of a large truck on the highway that was about 1 kilometre away. In fact, being there so long and getting comfortable with the environment gave us several advantages. We found the possible source of so many EVPs on those prior investigations years before. The building was retrofitted after lying abandoned for some time. But this was done as a museum and a historical site. It was not retrofitted up to the standards of a modern home. And we looked in several places and we saw that damp had intruded into the building and gone down the walls from the poor ceiling of gaps. With the street just outside one of the building's walls, there was ample opportunity for sounds to bleed into the home. We interpret what we see and hear for many reasons. Pareidolia, where we see patterns in the things that we observe around us. Just using scientific equipment does not make it science. Careful design goes into conducting scientific research to avoid false positives. And then finally, there is the human instinctual needs of fight or flight. Of course, there's fakery too. Here is one of my favourites from back in the day. I think you'll agree fakery's gotten better over the years. But there's one thing that I hadn't considered when I wrote my lecture in 2018, and what I don't see many people calling out now. It's what I call the art of omission. Now, if you've ghost hunted, you know there's probably countless times you've thought you'd found something amazing, only to find out pretty quickly that there was a simple explanation and it was debunked. I also bet you have thought, at least with your friends while you're doing it, that if we'd left this unsolved, just for shits and giggles, say, it would have made incredible evidence for the unwitting. That would be lying to your audience, of course, but the temptation's there, isn't it? This happened to us at the governor's residence just outside the Berrima jail that was in our second video. Immediately upon entering the building, we started hearing knocks. My lead investigator and I were obviously interested, and we started asking questions. We heard the sound coming from upstairs in the building, so we quietly crept up the stairs. "If that's you, can you knock?" As we moved up, it kept answering all our questions.
0 millivolts. We've brought some equipment with us that can tell us if you're here or not. You can come up to us, touch us, push us if you want. Loud thump?
Yep, in one of the rooms.
He finally went into the bedroom and found it was just a window pane banging its frame every minute or so from the wind. We laughed about it at the time, but it would have been pretty convincing stuff for a TV show or on YouTube without a debunk. Of course, there are more subtle kinds of deception too. The art of omission is something the media plays a big role in. You remember this picture from the Sydney papers I put in my first video? Why are there these young children in an old abandoned graveyard? What the picture doesn't show is that just out of frame on one side is a church, so it ain't abandoned or unused. It's also just off of the main street of the town where kids come and go all the time. It is also on the left-hand side of the picture that you can't see, a creek. Now, I don't know about you, but as a young kid going to explore the world, I would think nothing of going through that area from the street, which was 20 feet away, through the graves, down into the creek to play. But we don't get the full context. Another one you might be more familiar with was the first time I saw Waverley Hills Sanatorium. And this was on Ghost Hunters in 2006. And it's an amazing building. I can't and won't pay for a 20-year-old TV show behind a paywall, so I can't give you the actual visual here, but fact check me if I got it wrong. But I remember the opening aerial shots of the team approaching Waverley Hills. And I can remember being stunned by the creepy, meandering drive towards this abandoned building. And I truly believe this was in the middle of nowhere. I believe this would be a prime location due to its remoteness, despite the multi-story building lacking any windows or doors and being open to the elements for a large part. If you remember my early video, I banned those locations because it was overwhelmingly contaminated. Well, switch to 2010 and I saw another team driving in off the main road into Waverley. It's less than half a kilometre as the crow flies from the Dixie Highway, US 60, which is 4 lanes wide and has all the associated businesses along it. A suburban street lay even closer, with many multi-storey apartments less than a kilometre away. Lies? Not really. And probably not by the team either. Just the art of omission by film crews, producers and editors to skillfully produce a scarier setting for you, the viewer, making sure that what you see and hear seems more believable. And I think this is why, despite contacting TV shows to follow up on the results of our own investigations when they decided to come along with us, they never did get back to us for the results. You'd ring them and they'd, "Do you have any really good ghost stuff for us?" No? Nothing? Well, then it's boring. Contact us if you do. The sensational selves. I must admit, I did wonder when Steve was on the top floor, the 5th floor of the Waverly Hills Sanatorium, why I could see so many lights nearby. What was going on? So the next several months saw me writing up all the results, compiling them and sending them off to Ben Radford in the US, and also to other parties that were involved in the project. Ghosts, like religions, remain unfalsifiable. Their claims defy the laws of physics, especially so it seems when they are trapped in a corner by their devotees. Like the current Marvel or Tolkien or Star Wars universes, there's no consistent narrative, no telling what superpowers these characters can magically have, or not have, depending on the script the film needs to tell. They didn't want to appear to you. It was the wrong time of day or night. What was a male is now a female. They were elsewhere, or they decided to speak without setting off an EMF meter, but, however, they randomly did want to use an ovulus. What's that it says?
And that's why we drink.
Just make it up as you go. Science needs controls. It must be repeatable, falsifiable. You have to control the variables in your experimental setup. Results need to be able to be peer-reviewed and testable by others. So no, ghosts don't exist to science. They can only exist in the same way as gods or fairies or magic pixies could. Until you come up with a real way of testing it, the money and the time you're wasting, although fun with friends for sure.
That looks like demonic almost.
And it's like the head was like, oh!
It's great entertainment. It's no better than previous generations. You might as well be using Ouija boards or 19th century seances.
Jay, you're just weird.
And I'm sad to say, this is also now becoming more prevalent today.
Are you stuck here like in a purgatory?
Counselors.
Foolish.
You've just updated the cold readings and psychic visions of charlatans. This time the false positives from electronic equipment has replaced it. Not designed for ghosts, and in some cases downright toys. A final point on this. Imagine with me for a moment. You're pitching a TV show.
So, you have a TV show for me? Yes, sir, I do.
Where, as we've shown, there is no reliable proof for EMF or EVPs. A show without the gizmos, but where you had to actually capture something visual. A real apparition. Not a shadow, a black mass or a Connect stick figure. But an actual ghost.
Nick was by himself in this ballroom attempting to record voices from spirits on a digital recorder
known as EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena. Little did he know we were about to capture something unbelievable on this infrared camera.
So how often does this happen in your investigation? Some of you would say never. I'd answer for us, it happened probably only once. After 3 years of investigating every single month. Would it happen every show? Every third show? At least every season, right? No, not without fakery. So, you've got to ask yourself, what TV station would make a ghost show where you promise to show a possible ghost, I don't know, maybe every 3 or 4 seasons? You'd be laughed out of the meeting with the words, "Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out."
Oh, wow, 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 wow.
The stories we heard, they were very different. We heard so many tall tales on our investigations. One was in a gift shop where someone, casual as you like, dropped into the conversation that he'd come to work sometimes, and when he opened the door, the restaurant had been time shifted back to the 1800s. The reception was replaced by an old well for drinking water. More common were the believers, who promised that this place was so haunted, you won't believe what you find. After finding jack shit and doing the reveal with them, one person actually said to us, "Well, my other house in the city, that's the one that's really haunted. I cleansed this one." Thousands of shows later, we are still listening to EMF bells and buzzers and lights and distortions of sound and feelings. Oh, so many feelings.
I just need to tell you this.
Okay.
About what I was getting before I showed up here. I felt like we were going on the water. I felt like I needed to have a life preserver because I felt like I was going to go in the water.
Listening to people who are old enough to know better yelling, "Dude!
Dude, remove stairs, step, the ladder.
Dude, something rushed past me, bro. Something made it not work, bro. Something just shut his camera down, bro.
Scared the out of me, dude.
What's up, dude? And I scream! Don't come me, dude!
You might maybe have enough anomalies for a 1-hour special after years and years of investigating, which actually takes us back to where we started this whole series.
This series presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanations, but not necessarily the only ones, to the mysteries we will examine.
We said all this in our report, published in the Skeptical Inquirer newsletter in 2014. A publication that's had articles published in it by but it's sadly not displayed in the Zach Baggins Haunted Museum or the Conjuring House. Today, I'm pleased to see we've got a new generation of debunkers out there. They're often labelled toxic by the swindlers, the moneymakers, and perhaps more sadly by those that are easily swayed amongst us. It made me so happy to finally see this shite being called out on YouTube by people like Beardo, The Shape, Mythos, Mr. Grey, Kenny Biddle, and the Side-Eye Guy, amongst many others. The latter who I appeared on in 2014 to discuss our experiment. It's quite frankly a breath of fresh air. They want to find the truth. That's their passion. But so-called modern ghost hunting, well, it ain't it, folks. It needs to be put into the dustbin of history, along with the previous generations who found ghosts using more primitive but equally useless means of detection. Then we can all eagerly await the next era of ghost hunting that's to come.